Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from a publisher called Blue Mark Books Limited. This is a novel, and it's a novel about the law. It's got an intriguing title, Bugle and Yarrington. Now what that refers to is the firm of solicitors, which the person who has written this book, someone called James, a pseudonym. The title Bugle and Yarrington is written in the first person by Mr. James, and it's about his experiences in modern legal London. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I looked at this book and thought, well, it's quite interesting because there have been a lot of novels about law. It doesn't appeal to a lot of people, more about that in a minute, but we gave this book review title the following: How to Write an Entertaining Novel About the Law Without Being Boring. And it isn't a boring book. Let's look at the book first of all. I'll mention the cover again at the end. There is the cover. Nice pinstripe suit, interesting tie with all sorts of things not necessarily politically correct, like bottles of wine and glasses of wine, and an interesting, very controversial tie. There's the spine and then there's the back. Now on the inside cover there's some really screaming at you, different colours about a magnificent romp through London's legal world of the noughties. Thank you, that's what it's about. Then nothing about Mr. James, who wants to hide his identity. You do very well in the criminal justice process. There's some comments about the book there. Now the book is a lovely little book. Can I just show you again? That's the title, and the author has done something, I always like to mention it. He's dedicated to his parents. It's very well written, and in fact the chapters are nice because they're nice short chapters, and it runs through. You can see it's pro bono work there, for instance. I have to say that I think quite a lot of the points that are here are vignettes to a certain extent. Probably Mr. James, I presume he's a solicitor, or she is a solicitor. That's the end of the book there. Runs to about 370 pages. I think with the vignettes that he's got, he's probably sitting hanging around, as we all do, for a very long period of time waiting to get into court. He's probably scribbling away a few things, which is one of the reasons why the chapters are possibly a little bit shorter. But I thank him for that, because actually chapters that are very, very long can be somewhat tedious. Now this is what we say, let's face it, most novels about the law are boring and appeal to about 1% of the population, if you're lucky enough as the author to find a publisher willing to take you on. Enter the firm of Bugle and Yarrington, I'll get it right then. Yes, another collection of silly names to make up a firm of solicitors in practice, and we've plenty of those in London as it is. Or the Founding Fathers, as they're nicely tagged in the book itself. At least they're not Messrs. Sue Gravitt and Rum. The novel starts and ends with Christmas, so there is at least a bit of festive cheer at the beginning and at the end of the story. And what a good story it is too, as you follow it through. We're not going to give much away, so we will keep it a secret about the actual storyline, as the notorious author James it's all about himself, or herself, having just escaped possibly from his major role, presumably. At least we actually have had a recent judge, so as Richard Littlejohn might say, you really can't make this stuff up. Now, spanning the last 50 years, the big legal novels have centred around writers of the day like Henry Cecil, no, not the racing man, and his brothers-in-law series of easy-to-read comedies. A certain serious message in some of them, and it gently took the mickey out of the profession. It wasn't liked at the time by some people. Then we get the great John Mortimer's Rumpole, which took to the legal stage for a good 3 decades and entertain us as only Mortimer could do. And I think most people will be very familiar with Rumpole because of the excellent Leo McKern's definitive performance on television. Then there's been a gap to fill in recent years, with the arrival of the politically correct brigade, of which John was never really ever a member, as a decidedly old Labour man. But he was a great storyteller and probably part of his own time, now that I look at it some years after his passing. But I still have that fondness for Rumpel, which I think many of us who are in practice as I am will do, because we all know the problems with judges, and we all know the problems with witnesses and all the difficulties, and the fact that we're dealing with human beings. You don't need to know the law, you need to know about how to deal with people. So now we have this man called James, and he shows, I take it as a man, and he shows great promise in a difficult arena at a difficult time when you have to be so careful what you say and write. Now, what the author has achieved here is a very modern form of satire, but not really in the private eye mould in our view. There are so many absurdities in the law that James will have plenty of material for years to come in our view. Probably people like Roger Thursby and Horace Rumpole were never cynics, but they were sceptical enough as counsel to gauge the human condition with the sympathy one needs when dealing with both colleagues and clients. And that really is an important factor which unfortunately is missing in some members of the bar at the moment. However, most do exhibit that because it's part of the job you have, trying to handle and manage your client. Now, Bugle and Yarrington. There is, of course, a love story in this, with the touch of lightness which the author has exhibited throughout, and it's rather appealing. It's not overdone, but it's the thread running all the way through. So certainly, if you are a lady barrister, I think you will be attracted to the romantic element of it. But there are some serious satirical points to be made as well, and I'm sure all lady barristers, who are just the same as men barristers because we are counsel, they will look at it in exactly the same way. Now, we didn't find it a laugh-out-loud book in that sense, but it is one that's quite difficult to put down, and the short chapters I thought were an absolute boon. As I said, I suspect there were probably little vignettes being written in the trial book while you're waiting around to get called in. Let me conclude by saying that James might consider changing his name by deed poll, but he is surely here to stay, and the subtitle of this most entertaining set of stories within stories, Love, Law and Laughter in London, sums the novel up nicely, and we look forward to further treats on how the modern novelist sees the modern London legal world. It's great fun to read, and the book cover is the giveaway. Now, I'm not going to give any more than that away, but there's the nice book cover. Now, for the naughties, there's the spine, and then there's the back. Just remembering again what we've got inside in the dust. There we go, cover there, and then a little bit more there about Blue Mark books. I thought this was really interesting. There is in fact a website, www.jamesjamesauthor.com, if you want to have a little bit look more at that. I'm sure one day all will be revealed about who this person is. In the meantime, we have this really rather nice novel. It's a good novel. I look forward to some more novels. They are like many of the stories. Henry Cecil did the same thing, and Rumpole certainly did. Mortimer did with Rumpole. They are basically short stories brought together and interwoven. And I think he succeeds brilliantly here, and it's something I'll treasure. So thank you very much, James. And of course, Blue Mark for producing and taking the courage to produce this, because I hope there's a really good market out there for you. Thank you anyway. Bye-bye.